You're listening to the Witchy Wit podcast, episode 11, Agreements.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to the podcast, and before we get going, let's talk a little bit about things that are happening outside of witchdom. Or whatever. Witchiness.
You are the queen of witchdom, might
witchdom.
I say.
Thank you. So how have things been going for you?
So what I've been thinking about a lot is the vaccinations and the COVID vaccine being shared. So what I wanted to kind of say was I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of all of the vaccination distribution that my commitment to myself was I was only going to celebrate when people got vaccinated. Mm-hmm. Because like people posted on social media, which I think is great because that's sharing and like helping normalize. But I've noticed some friends, like whenever people say that they've gotten either the first or the second, that they might say something like, "Oh, I'm so jealous," or like, "Well, when can I get mine?" Like in jest. But my commitment is to only be excited and to celebrate. Which sounds really great, right?
It sounds perfect to me. And it sounds so you, actually.
Thank you. So it's great in theory, but I wanted to...
Okay, I know where this is going now.
But I wanted to share like the interesting thing that I kind of bumped up against in myself was... So like I have friends that work in law enforcement who've received their vaccines. I have friends who work in the medical field who have received one or both dosages. And like that was easy for me to process. I've had friends who are teachers, I'm also a teacher, who have gotten them, and like that was also like woohoo, like yay. Yeah. But so we live in San Antonio, Texas, where the rodeo is
it's fixing to start, as they say.
Right. It's huge, right? It's a huge citywide thing, and I found out that the rodeo workers are getting vaccinated, and so this is not about like whether that's right or wrong, but it was just interesting because that was the first time that it's really popped up for me where I've been like, what?
Like they get the vaccine.
What? Yeah. Like and so my big learning with it is that it's really, so it's like not fair for me to get upset with the people who are getting vaccinated. I'm putting the system on trial. Like I know I sound silly, but like it's the system.
Yeah.
And like this happens all the time, I think, in other areas where we get upset, like we shoot the messenger when it's like this is not where my attention needs to go, that these rodeo workers, I mean, I want them to get vaccinated. There's going to be like how many thousands of people in that?
Yes. Oh,
in the AT&T Center?
Yeah, some incredible amount. Yeah. I can't even remember.
Thousands of people.
During the day, it's like 20 to 30,000, I think.
Yeah, it's it's huge. It's where the Spurs play, so of course it's going to be gigantic.
Yes. Except they'll not this year because they'll be socially distanced, physically distanced. So maybe only 10,000.
Yeah, but a lot of people. So like my beef, I'm a vegetarian. My tofu is not with the people who are getting vaccinated. I want people to get vaccinated, but so this is my process of thinking. My tofu, my beef, is with like that we have a system that is not like it's not like a nationwide priority list that we're like it's just so decentralized and so sporadic, and I do believe people are doing the best that they can. But it was just interesting that's the rough edge that I rubbed up against, and I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable feeling.
Right.
Like let's see what this is about.
Because it bumps into a whole lot of things about who we think we are, and oh wow, yeah.
Let's put the system on trial.
Let's put the system. That's right. Okay. Well, we need. we need the devil's advocate.
Ugh.
Well, someone has to. But I'll keep that in mind.
What about you? What's going on in your life outside of as the queen of witchdom?
So I apparently used the wrong term for this earlier, but I was so excited because you gave me some great advice about how to clean my laminate floors.
I love cleaning.
my fake wood floors.
Yes.
And so you said a little teaspoon of can I say the
Yes.
Okay, a teaspoon of Tide,
Powdered Tide only.
powdered Tide in a gallon of water. And that I need, so let me take a step back. The problem, I have these laminate floors, and when they were installed back in 2012, I was so excited, and I just thought, oh, this is wonderful. And over the years, they've just gotten duller and duller and duller. And even when I try cleaning, they look streaky and a whole bit. Anyway, so I mentioned this to Leilani, who is the queen of clean. Oh,
and I love hearing you say that.
And then she told me, because she's on these Facebook sites, Facebook pages that have, what are they called? Do you remember what the term is called for those pictures?
We just call them dump. Like take pictures.
They're dumps?
Yeah, like dump photos.
Dump photos. Okay,
now
dump
that
photos.
I say it, it does sound weird.
So when she walked in earlier, because I had just done this a couple of days ago, and I was so excited, and I poured it. I'm sorry, I keep taking steps back. Eventually, I'm going to move forward. Okay, so these Facebook pages, they're cleaning pages where they talk about how to, different tips and techniques for cleaning, and then to show how much a certain technique or method worked, they pour the bucket in the toilet, and then they take a picture of the toilet. So they call these dump shots, right?
Yeah, like dump photos.
Dump photos. Yeah. Anyway, so when Leilani walked through the door, I said, "Oh, I wanted to take a dump photo, like a dump shoot, but I couldn't remember the term for it." So she just kind of looked at me a little strangely.
For a moment, I'm not understanding what you were, or I was thinking I understood what you were saying as something different.
Right. So anyway, the point I was just trying to make is she really hooked me and it got me excited about the idea of not only doing this clean, but being able to kind of evaluate how clean your how much the method is working, because you get to actually look at the dirty water and see how much dirt you've picked up.
So satisfying.
It's so satisfying. So I did this a couple of days ago, and I poured it down the toilet. Unfortunately, I have a low water toilet, which is great. Unfortunately, but when you pour the stuff down there, there's really nothing to take a picture of, because it just goes right down. It just flushes itself. It's like, oh, okay. Anyway, but I'm so excited because now I have this new method, and now I know that I can get the 9 years that we figure out 9 years of buildup off of my Pergo floors.
You got to put the system on trial for people selling us products that.
Oh, so yeah, let me say the reason that I'm it's going to take me a while to do this. I'm going to have to do this over and over again until I've worked my way through it. Is I buy these products. I'm not going to say any names, but they're products that you can get at Lowe's and Home Depot that advertise as being especially formulated for laminate floors. And so would you tell everyone what you told me about these products?
So according to these groups that I'm a part of, the products actually, they put coats down of residue, which then acts as this type of glue or cement that actually traps the dirt in. So then you're putting like layer upon layer of this over the years, of course, of this residue. And so then you get like this residue, this dirt chemical or whatever it is, product residue that dulls your floors and also traps in the dirt. And I mean, the before and after pictures of my kitchen floor, do you remember when I said that to you a couple months ago? Yeah. I mean, it's like, I thought my tile was brown. Turns out it's cream. I mean, it's so disgusting. And I keep my house pretty clean. And then when I was using this method, I was like, what the heck? Yeah. And then I felt this sense of betrayal by
these companies,
the system,
the system where you spend extra money. This is not. It's not like throwing down some bleach or ammonia or whatever. You're spending this is like a niche type of product, and you're spending extra money for it, thinking that it's the best thing for your floors.
Yes.
And instead, I mean, not to sound gross, but instead, I'm building up a layer of dirt, wax, dirt, wax, dirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll keep everyone apprised
And,
of developments.
You and I both try in our own ways, see our previous episode, like living naturally, right? So then I'm like, okay, so what's better? Like, do I use this teaspoon of powdered Tide per a few gallons of water that I like use to mop, and then most of it gets thrown out? You know, so like how much, like I'm like doing these calculations in my mind,
yes,
like,
yeah.
is that more natural or
Yeah.
is that worse than the
Yeah,
layers of, like, I just am left doing this sort of
Well,
math.
this is my thinking, that I can, use this Tide to, dig through these layers and just keep going. And then maybe later, if I want to just wash using water and vinegar or water and lemon essential oil or something like that, then I can. But I got to get down there first, because I'm sorry, my stuff's not cutting it. It's just not doing it. So this is. I just feel lighter just knowing that eventually my floors will no longer be streaky; that they'll actually be clean.
It's gonna be so good.
I'm just so looking forward to it.
I can't wait to see your dumb photos.
Dumb photos. Yes, I will definitely take pictures and maybe post some on our website. Our episode is about agreements. And when I use this term, we're going to be using it in a very, very specific way. These are basically kind of contracts within one of our organizations, and it allows us it creates a framework for our relationships. You want to talk a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just did a quick Google search, and I was kind of surprised, because my experience with agreements, meaning like agreements as in guidelines for behavior and interaction within a certain space.
Nice.
So like people could call them rules, but rules have like a lot of connotation around it. So agreements is I would say very different than rules, because it's something that you agree into, whereas a rule is something that you're told and you have to follow, or something punitive happens. But my experience around agreements is that they exist pretty frequently in like quote unquote hippie spaces,
Yeah.
But I was doing some Google searching, and like even the American Heart Association had agreements.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sent you a message, was like, even the American Heart Association has agreements. That's kind of cool.
And you see, I think, first of all, I think that they're becoming more of a thing. And the idea is that it reflects a more even distribution of power, and it reflects, we see this a lot in consensus-driven groups, where it's not necessarily the majority, it's that we're all going to sit with this and we're going to work our way through this. And so agreements kind of come out of those processes. Our organization has been in existence now for 26, 27 years. And we got agreements relatively early. I would say, I know for a fact that when I first joined the group in 2002, we didn't. But pretty soon after that, maybe because of me, no. Like, oh my God, we need agreements. Yeah.
Here she comes.
Well, and so I'll talk a little bit about that. We're joking about it, I'm hoping. But agreements came about because there were maybe, I don't want to call them behavioral transgressions, but there were behaviors that many thought were not for the best. It was not for the best thing for the group, right? And so we began to think about what are some of the things that we need to have so that we can have good interactions, good healthy interactions. And so the agreements that we have came about that way. And I think now we have 11, and for a long time I think we had maybe 8 or 9 or something like that. And only recently do we develop the last couple. But I mean, we've been pretty guided by them for at least 15 years, that I know for a fact, and I would say between 15 and 20.
And my experience with groups is that whether or not we say the rules, or the agreements, whether or not they're written down, like they exist, whether or not they're acknowledged. And so by having them clearly written down, like what we are agreeing to in shared space, that makes it more transparent. And with transparency comes the ability to navigate the situation in a way where power can be shared, as opposed to like dominating. And also, like, I think that I think that from what I've read, this is a truth, that especially in groups with women, there can be interesting power dynamics. Put the system on trial again.
That's going to be our mantra for this
the mantra
week.
For today, because it's not it's not inherent within women, but in our culture we're socialized. Women can be socialized in ways that power can be uncomfortable, and then there's so by having these agreements, it sets us up for a successful communal experience. That's my thinking.
No, I agree. I think with any organization, there's going to be rules or customs or traditions. Unfortunately, in a number of them, they're tacit. That means silent. And you when you join a group, you kind of have to figure them out. And even people who belong for a while may not know all of them because they're never said, right? And so by virtue of the fact that we actually sat down and worked our way through them, it makes me more mindful of what they are just from the process of creating them and thinking, okay, what does this mean? Does this mean, am I a part of this? For me, as we were designing the agreements, was how much of this am I imposing what makes me comfortable as opposed to what's the best thing for the group. And I think for anytime there's an individual in the group, there's this kind of this tension between what I need versus what the group needs. And I think the agreements can be very helpful in helping the individual find that boundary, but also helpful for the group in helping the individual to find their place in that group. And the thing about it is, I don't even know if we were thinking about the mindful aspect of it when we were coming up. To be honest, I'm pretty sure we just had people misbehaving, and so we were just trying to figure out literally rules. I mean, and then the idea is, what can we all agree on? That's the thing. I think that's the difference, like you were saying, with rules that are kind of imposed from above, and agreements is that, okay, I'm not going to say, well, because I want everyone to come in quietly, that's what we all do. I have to sit down and talk to all of the people and see if we can agree to that. And just hearing the various arguments that come up about that, I think is helpful for me to just get more insight into my sisters and insight into the culture. And, I may change my mind because I recognize that what I need is not necessarily what's best for the group.
And if I want to be a part of a group that is one of our group's agreements is about respecting diversity. If I want to be a part of a group that respects diversity, that means that no top-down leader can say what is best. Instead, it's something that we all create. We co-create together. And we've even been through a transformation where we've added some agreements over the years, and then more recently we've adjusted an agreement.
Right.
Just because in my experience with that was that our group kind of grew and matured and deepened in a way. And that agreement, the intention was what I would say, the intention was spot on, but the wording kind of was more archaic than what we needed at that time. And so we came together as a group and we rewrote the agreement. And that was a really beautiful process too, I thought, because it helped us clarify what we really want.
Exactly. And it was really sweet for me because it reflected our growth as a lot of times people do these practices because they want to grow and develop, but it also reflected the fact that our group has grown. And so the wording that we used was pretty appropriate for where we were. But then as we became, we adjusted the words. We edited it so that it reflected more of where we that point in time. And we may change some of these again in the future.
The agreements too for me were, I had come from a group. I didn't come from immediately, but I had passed through a group that was not what I would say very healthy, which in my experience maybe is somewhat common to find them around, but it was not a group that I felt good about being in. And so I was very skeptical when I was searching.
I do remember that, yes. Like you would come in and sing, dance, drum, and then where'd she go? She was gone.
Bye.
She was in, she was out.
I did not stay to talk. I was like, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I was not sure that this group was really
waiting to see when we'd like break into like cat fights and stuff.
Something, yeah, like when the drama would start, like when the
Okay.
But what got me in the door was the agreements. I saw them posted on the website, and first of all, the website was purple, and I like purple, so that was a good thing. But then I also remember that the agreements were posted, and I was like, oh, really? Like they say that this is how the group is supposed. This is the norms for the group. Well, if that's true, I like that, but we're going to see if that's...
I'll be the judge of that.
I will be the judge of that. And so, so I may have some baggage around it or whatever, but it took me a few years.
So you came in with your checkboard. Okay, they did that today. Okay, all right.
But then I saw them at work, and it helped me feel safe enough that there would be accountability and that the group actually stood by them. And that's why I stayed. 15, 16 years later, I'm still here.
That's right. So you are. And I don't mean to imply at all that because we have these agreements that we're all behaving well all the time.
See our last episode where I was throwing a frisbee around.
That's right.
It doesn't always work.
It doesn't. But it gives us a way to have the conversation, and it gives us a framework where, if nothing else, we can say, let's look at this and let's think about this, and we can be helpful. We had a meeting a couple of days ago, and someone was not necessarily it wasn't that they weren't eye referencing, but they were saying something. I remember now. What it was is one of our agreements is to use eye reference eye referencing. Oh, thank you. Eye referencing. It's like, what is it called now? And it wasn't that she was not using it. It was that she was, in my opinion, if she had reframed her conversation to use eye referencing, it would just allow her to see what a wonderful job she was doing. So she was kind of like pushing off, you guys might think this. And I said, no, just go ahead and say it. Just own it. Like you were proud of yourself and say, and so it's in a way, it's not only just so that we can be focused and we can make sure that we're not hurting other people's feelings. It's also a way for us to help ourselves to shine as much as possible and to be the best us, the best. So for me to be the best me possible.
I love that you say that too, because so for me, I've only had agreements in my sacred space, and then in the summer camp that I'm at over the summers, we have them there too, and it's just based in the same concept of like communal, shared, co-created space and using that. But then after rooting myself in this group for so long, I've seen me take them into my own life. It's not, at first it was something that you do in communal space, something I do in communal space, and then I just caught myself.
I know, isn't it amazing?
And then I realized how important they were, and I started taking them into my life, like in this very moment where I said, like you do, and I was like, no, like I do, and a dear friend of ours has them typed up and by her front door, and they're the agreements for her house, and I went and visited her pre-pandemic, and I walked in and I saw them by her door, and I was like, damn. Like that is a new level of awesomeness I want in my life. So she emailed me the agreements that she had typed up. I was like, thank you.
And there's another woman in our group who dedicates to one a year, and everything that she does kind of springs from that, and that's kind of the lens that she uses to do a lot of her other personal work, which I think is so beautiful, and it's such a way of being mindful about them.
It seems to me like on the surface they look kind of mundane or whatever, but they are so sexy. They are just so awesome.
They really are.
And like we dive into them, and they yield such work, like such fruitful soil for me to like really dive into, and like which ones are hard for me. Well, isn't that interesting that that's hard for me to I reference, or that's hard for me to accept feedback. I wonder why that is. Like, let's get curious about that. Or I can do that at my spiritual circle, but at work it's hard. I wonder why that, because I haven't posted on my work too.
But you don't. Really?
I do.
Those were snaps. Snap. Snap.
I haven't posted on my desk.
Yes. One of the things I have found is that with a couple of friends, they will spout one of them, because I guess I've said it a couple of times in our conversation, and so she'll say, "Oh, that doesn't sound like she's thinking well of others or self and others." I said, "Oh yeah." So
agreements by osmosis.
Exactly.
So come in.
Exactly. We've mentioned a couple of them, I referencing and diversity, respecting diversity. But maybe we can just kind of go through. We are not going to say these word for word, because they belong to our organization, and they're not to be bandied about publicly, I don't think. But we can at least say what they are, because I think that these are agreements that can obviously work at a number of different places. So you want to say a couple of them? Yeah,
the one that I mentioned earlier that had gone through so many transformations with our group was about authenticity. So that's one of my favorites.
And there's we have another that's about really practicing listening closely when someone's talking, not thinking. And by that meaning that you're going to spend that time listening, not trying to think through what you want to say in response. You're just going to sit and listen to them, and not talk over, not interrupt, giving them their space until we have an indication that they're done, and then you talk.
Another one is about hearing feedback about my impact. And I've seen this in a number of groups that we're a part of. They say it differently, but just the understanding that with leadership comes the part of leadership is accepting that we are going to hear about how people are receiving what and how we lead. So, and that our intent can be different, but we still need to understand how it's landing.
That's a really powerful one. Really, really powerful one.
Says two leaders who have both. I'm going to speak for myself, but say from a leader who has gotten some feedback.
Yes, indeed. And it has helped us.
Oh, it's been so productive to get that feedback and
really
grow.
Is. Yes. Growing is so easy.
Yeah,
growing is so easy. So that's another one. And then another one, and this I think is one that we're all of these, we're not perfect, so I just want to say that. But another one we have is about respecting time, and that means when you're sharing, recognizing that there are other women that there's a number of women there, and you have to make sure that there's plenty of time for them to share. So you might have to moderate. I might have to moderate myself.
And I've heard this in a number of groups where there were some other groups aside from ours where they call it the Brownie Agreement, or some people add like an adjective before the. Or you know what I'm thinking?
Yeah, I
the
think
communist
I did.
Brownie.
Yeah.
You haven't heard that. What have you heard it called?
Oh,
okay.
no.
It's okay. It's okay. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But like the idea of being that time is something that we need to share, like a brownie, and you want to make sure everybone gets a piece of the brownie.
That's right. And it's the group is healthier when you're not holding on to. See, my brownie had an S-H at the beginning of it and ended with a T. And the idea being that time, you think of time as something you want to hold on to, but time is better when you let it go, so that no one has like a bunch of that they're holding on to. Right. That you let it spread out, and that's much healthier for the group than everybody holding on to their own stuff. Yeah.
And then like a way I would summarize a number of our other agreements is that it's about when I look at them, I think it's about what is like the core intent of our group, and then how is it that we can hold that within ourselves and hold that expectation to others. So whatever our core values are, that's how we shaped some of the agreements to hold ourselves and others to that standard, that we think that of them, we think that of ourselves, we expect that, and we seek that.
Right. And for me, a lot of it is just healthy interaction, and not just healthy interaction, but interaction in a way that I can help lift you up, and thereby I'm lifting myself up. And if we're all lifting each other up, we're just floating like, floating like, I don't know, feathers or birds or something. But it's really being an intentional part of the group and recognizing what a powerful position that is, being an individual in a group, and how you can contribute so much to that group and making it better.
There's been times where I have been not in our group and I get grumpy and I'm like, they are not following the agreements. Oh, Leilani, they don't know what the agreements are. Like, this person at the grocery store is not following the agreements.
Right. Well, I just remember someone, I'm not going to say what they went to, but they went to this other kind of witchy retreat, and they thought that everyone had these agreements. And so they were like really kind of bummed because they were saying, nobody's calling them on this. All these women are just like, they're totally out of alignment with agreements and no one's saying anything. And someone had to take them aside and said, oh, no, they don't follow. They don't have agreements here. It's like, oh, wow.
And what an example, though, because those people, I'm assuming, are fabulous. They're at a witchy retreat. They've got to be cool. Hello.
Yes, of course.
We're awesome.
Yes.
But when we don't have these boundaries, good fences make good neighbors. Like,
that's
when we
exactly
don't have
right.
these boundaries, like, we are left to our own devices, and then chaos ensues.
Either chaos ensues, or people start kind of positioning themselves as the cops, as the police, to make people behave well, and neither one of those are healthy.
And if left to my own devices, I'll be up at the front with a clipboard, and I'll have like a color-coded spreadsheet of what everybody needs to do. And that is also not following the agreement. Because I'm sure there's a witch in the back who's like, really, girl? Really?
No, we're not going to do that at 2 p.m.
That's right. Nope.
No, that's true. A major aspect of any group interaction, in my opinion, is how that group deals with power. And one of the things I love about the agreements is that it helps us to it helps us in a healthy way to negotiate power within the group, and how it's used, why it's used, the purpose, etc.
And again, like we said this at the beginning, if it's not transparent, that doesn't mean it's not there. Like, it's still there.
They're still there.
There's power in identifying the way that power is used in a group, because then it becomes transparent, and then we can name it, and then we can work within that to create create what we want with intention.
Oh, totally. And I have just been in so many groups where there's these tacit, I don't know if I'd call them agreements, because you can't agree to something you don't know is there, right? So these tacit rules or customs or traditions within that group, and in many cases they're not stated because they're used as bludgeons. They're used when someone breaks them, and that's when you find out about them. And I just think that that's so unfair to everyone in the group, not just to the person who might be initially hurt by it, but to anybody in the group. And so one of the things I love about the agreements is that it talks about, it doesn't talk about power per se, but it talks about how all of these elements that go into the power dynamic and how they can be handled in a healthy manner.
So we wanted to take some time and just talk a little bit about power and the way that power looks in groups. And of course, there's like a bajillion resources on this. So, and we're by far not the experts, but we've definitely done our reading, and we've definitely done our experience and seen how it shows up.
Yeah, and we're going to actually, thank you. That noise was us playing with the microphone. But so one of our resources was Brene Brown's, because I think, first of all, I think she is just, I listen to her podcast and read.
You listen to her podcast?
Yeah.
I listen to her podcast too.
No, get out.
Way.
Yes way.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, this is so funny. Okay, well, see.
I love Brene Brown.
Yeah.
Do you know that she lived in San Antonio at one point in time?
I didn't. Oh, I think I might have. I knew she had the Texas connection. Yeah.
She currently lives in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
She summers on Lake Travis, and she used to live in San Antonio. So that's my claim to fame.
Is that you know that about Brene Brown?
That I live in the same city that she once lived in. That's how much of a fangirl I am.
Okay, there we go. She's just, I just love her because she's just okay, we might need another episode on just podcasts. We'll write that down later. But I just love her because I think she's just a really wide woman. She has a lot of wide interests. I loved her Dolly Parton episode, and I love, she talks to all of these like really woo people, and then these people who are totally not woo, and just listening to how she negotiates that is just really interesting. Anyway, so we're talking about her because she talks a lot about power over, and then power with, to, and within. And now, having said I love her to death, I'm going to just put it out there. I slightly disagree with how she, I think I have a nuance that I'd like to add. She talks about power over, and one of the things that we talk about in our group is there's power over and there's power under. So I'm just going to read, if okay, I'm going to take my glasses off. I'm going to read some of her elements. Leaders who work from a position of power over believe that power is finite and use fear to protect and hoard power. Leverage fear to divide, destabilize, and devalue decency. Give people someone to blame for their discomfort. Maintain power over by demonstrating an ever-increasing capacity for bullying. Frame constructs like personal rights and freedom to polarize, and being in service of others is seen as weak. And so I say that because that's power over, but if you think about it, power under uses those same things, right? It's just that instead of being like a leader who is bullying and controlling, someone who is power, who plays the power under dynamic, they're just so broken, and they're so if I were in a position of I'm gonna I reference all the way through if I can. If I were playing the power under dynamic, I would position myself as someone who's fragile, and you have to be careful so that you don't hurt my feelings. And so I kind of control the group from a position of weakness, and so, but using those same things about fear, but it's my fear as opposed to the fear of the other people.
And how many times has the dynamic of a group gone a different direction because of that power under dynamic? Maybe there's that person in the front that's leading, but like the whole group bends to the will of the person crying in the corner, or the person who is so upset that somebody did something, and then it throws everything off.
Totally. And so so one of the things about our agreements is that if you think about it, all of those ideas help to decentralize power, and so it becomes the power of the community, as opposed to one person who either wields power from a position of power over or power under.
Then we're left with power with, where we have the power with each other, where we co-create that power, and we all buy into the same agreement so that we can co-create and share that brownie.
Yes, exactly. Whatever that brownie may consist of.
Whatever the brownie may consist of time and of power and of leadership.
Right, exactly. And the important thing about that is to say that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't leaders, right? There are leaders, but they're leading by consensus. They're leading by the agreement of the group, because we need one person to kind of focus something or whatever to facilitate the conversation. And it's a powerful position to be in, but because of our feedback agreement, that the people who are not necessarily standing in front also have a great deal of contribution to the dynamic.
My feeling is my power as a leader in the group does not insulate me from feedback. In fact, it intensifies the feedback.
Yes. Well, I think that's a very good point. That by virtue of stepping out on the stage, and being in front of everyone, you have so much more visible impact. Maybe not as you have more visible impact, and thereby there's that responsibility to make sure that you're wielding it in a way that's most conducive for for a healthy group.
And if I want to keep being a leader, or even just being a part of the group, I want to make sure that power is coming from other people trusting me and supporting me, and me trusting and supporting them. And so that power with is what stokes that flame of connection and support, instead of me standing up front saying, "This will be this way," or me crying in a corner being like, "So and so is so mean," and I'm like caricature. It's a caricature, but
I love the phrase trust and support, because it's all about, in my opinion, it's all about that. To be able to stand in front of a really strong group of people, not necessarily just women, but a really strong group of people, and be in a position where you can help the group to really go in one direction. That requires a great deal of trust, both on their part and on my part, that I'm doing the right job, and that I will know when I'm not, because they'll tell me, as opposed to me, as opposed to there being doubt and insecurity, which can lead to fear, which can lead to all sorts of yucky power things.
And it seems to me like we're also somewhat swimming against the stream, as I think is common for witches.
Yes.
But in a culture where power and the rules look so different, and coming from you and I who both worked in public schools, where things are so punitive, it's just such a trip, to like reorganize what power and what community can look like.
Yes. And so this takes me back to groups that have those tacit agreements. The term you used was punitive. And they're often used in a punitive way, as opposed to being used as guidance, as guidance. And so our agreements, I think, are guides to good behavior, not these unspoken things that you learn about afterwards when you're punished because you haven't done them. Which I guess they're still guides, but if you don't know about them, how can they guide you, right?
Right.
So the transparency of having a set of agreements, I think, is just so powerful. And it just speaks to that willingness to be a group and to participate as a group. And I think that that's rare too, that, and I don't want to say it's rare. I don't know if it's rare or not, but I know that I have not had the experience of being in a lot of groups that have had that healthy relationship with power and shared power.
It's definitely deepened my connection to our group, and also deepened my connection to people in the group.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much.
Which I am so appreciative.
Yes.
Like you.
I was going to say, being here. Yes, indeed. Yes. So, and I can't say this enough. When I remember that this may not necessarily be an agreement in other places, but I can still agree to follow these agreements, even if it's not yet a part of that culture, and maybe inject that a little bit in there, that sense of shared governance, but also trust and support, and that, even maybe leading by modeling, leading by example.
Well, it sounds like you have, like, with your friend who's like, well, like, you're not... How do you know the agreement? Oh, I probably talk about them all the time.
Yeah, I try, and I don't want to, and I'm trying not to impose them on other people, but I often catch myself, and I'll say, okay, I'm not thinking well of self and others or something, and that's the one that she gloms onto, because apparently that's something that resonates a lot for her. So yeah.
And I think too, like, holding the agreements in my own life. Sure, maybe the people outside of our circle don't know about the agreements, but that doesn't mean that I can't still hold myself to these standards.
That's exactly right.
And hopefully that inspires others to, maybe join me.
Who knows? Who knows? But
maybe it'll inspire our listeners to consider.
There you go. Well, and so, I like to think of, like the first person to do something might be considered a little wackadoodle. But, then after a while, people will say, oh, well, that's working for her. Look at her. Look at Leilani. She's And so I'd like a little of that. I'll have a taste of that. And eventually, I mean, the more it works for us, the more it works for other people, because they see it's working for us. And so they may not, again, it's not one of those things where we necessarily have a spoken, transparent agreement, but we'll get to the place where we will.
So maybe if you're listening and you have a circle that you are connecting with, or you're thinking of starting one, or even just a relationship with a partner.
Yes.
Having a set of agreements that all parties involved have agreed to is, if you can't tell from our experience, something we think is phenomenal.
Oh yeah, I just have to say this really fast, because I had pretty much a great model of passive aggressivity growing up, and adopted it really, really well. in some of my relationships. And it was only when I started really thinking about the agreements, not just in the space of our circle, but using it outside of the circle for just my own betterment, that I realized how passive aggressive just how I had all of these agreements in my head that people were supposed to be living up to, right? But I didn't tell them, and then I got pissed when they broke. So it really just a word that I know that you use a lot, and I love it, is accountability. It just made me think, what am I asking people to do? And it caused me to really think about being accountable to myself for what I'm asking for, and to asking for what I need, which is one of our agreements. So I think it's been helpful for me just in my personal development. Our poem for today is called Be Thankful for It All by Amanda Kay Burke, who is, I don't know a whole lot about her. So if you do, feel free to let us know. We'd love to be able to share more information about her. But I found her on the internet, and she is as far as I know, I could be off by a little bit, but I think she's 25 years old, a woman in Alaska, a poet in Alaska. And, I will put a link on our homepage, so if anyone wants to find any more of her poems.
Be thankful for it all. Enjoy every minute you are alive, bad as well as the good. Bits of happiness wait to be mined that make life as it should.
They said happiness cannot be bought. Please believe that's correct. Leave me peace and thought to quietly reflect.
Another day, little things, say thank you and please. Feel so up and down like swings alone with memories.
I say be thankful for all. That is fine if you don't agree. Value each moment, no matter how small. They all hold importance to me.
Well, we hope that you have felt some sort of importance to us in our circle as we talk about the agreements, and we're certainly thankful for it all. I am really thankful for it with you.
Me too.
So we thank you for being here with us. Before we head out, we really invite you to rate and review us. That's a way that other people can find us, and it's super helpful for us. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and share sections of our podcast maybe with friends and family if you'd like. But we really appreciate having you all around, and thanks so much for listening, and we really are grateful for each of you.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Witchy Wit Podcast.
Email us at witchywit123@gmail.com. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Get exclusive content and support us on Patreon.
Stay witchy, y'all.